Good evening, everyone, and welcome to SocialFlight Live. I'm Jeff Simon. We have such a fun and wonderful show for you this evening. Chris and Kim, also known as Baron Pilot and Flying SIC, are here, and I just can't wait to get to them. Before we get started, just a few things, of course. SocialFlight is really, we're absolutely thrilled because we're seeing so many events starting to happen, and I would just want to encourage as many people as possible to get out there and check out socialflight.com and the free SocialFlight mobile app for Apple and Android devices. Also, on September 1st, coming up very, very soon, we are giving away a Lightspeed Zulu 3 headset. And all you need to do in order to compete, to win this, is get out there with the app Fly, check in with our Fly to Win challenge. You get points for everywhere you land, but in the end, you only have to check in once to be entered into the drawing. The top people on the leaderboard chart will have additional entries, and that gives them more chances to win. In addition, I would just like to welcome everyone who's also joining us from our SocialFlight Live podcast. We just launched the podcast, and after we finish each of our live shows, it also goes live on our podcast. So be sure to check that out on wherever you get your podcast services from. Now, with over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, the Baron Pilot channel is inspiring both pilots and aviation enthusiasts alike to get out there and fly. Together, Chris and Kim share their adventures and their love of flying by taking viewers along for the ride just everywhere that they go. Their new adventure is truly captivating as it follows Kim's journey to go from second in command to pilot in command, including all of the highs and lows that the flight training process brings to so many. I am absolutely thrilled to call them friends and even more excited to have them with us tonight here on SocialFlight Live. I'm going to bring them on the line now. Please help me welcome Baron Pilot Chris and Flying SIC Kim. How are you guys this evening?
That has got to be the most amazing introduction I think I have ever had. I don't even, look, I got chills. I don't even know how to top that. That's amazing. We're fantastic. Thank you for having us on.
Oh, you're very, very welcome, both of you. How are you doing tonight, Kim?
I'm doing very well. Very well, thank you.
Well, you deserve that and much, much more. I have been not only, of course, friends of yours, but a fan of your show for so many years. I love everything that you're doing, and I'm really thrilled to talk in a little bit about what you're doing now and this new adventure with the flight training program. But to bring everyone kind of up to speed, give me a little bit background on how you got started with Baron Pilot and how you found each other and how you got going with this amazing channel.
Okay, so a story that not a lot of people really know is that we actually met in the TV world. It was coincidentally, we met at actually a TPC Golf here in Jacksonville, and saw each other for the show, and then didn't see each other for a whole year, and then the next year we did the same show again and met up, and it was like the show was yesterday, and we just picked up where we left off, and we became fairly quick friends. And that was it. And actually, I only knew about his TV world for a few months, and then one day he let it slip that he had to go fly his plane somewhere, and I was just like, what? Who are you? Who is this? And then he was like, oh yeah, I'm a pilot, and oh yeah, by the way, I have a YouTube channel. And I'm like, I'm not getting into this. I don't know what I'm getting into.
She was anti-it from the beginning, for sure. She wanted no part of it. Her first flight, I wasn't allowed to record. Like, she was, nope.
In fact, oh, really? I thought you were saying the opposite. I thought at the beginning you're like, oh, tell me more. I like this airplane and movie star thing.
The mystery story goes is that he met me in a bar, and that he was keeping his model airplane, showing all the girls, saying, who wants to ride in my airplane? Oh, yeah. And that's how he caught me.
Welcome YouTube comments.
Yeah. But no, so it was completely opposite. I'm born and raised in a military town. I'm Navy. I'm a Navy brat, but I've always been around aviation, but GA was not introduced to me. There was there was basically, you had to be in the military in order to be in aviation. Otherwise, there wasn't anything. So when he came around and showed me GA Aviation, I was like, okay, what does this mean?
What are these small planes?
Yeah, what is this
Have you
world,
ever,
you
Wait, what?
know?
have you ever been to a GA airport before, Kim?
I don't think I had. Well, I mean, going to air shows, again, we have air shows here in Jax yearly, so we always went to those, but it wasn't like, again, it wasn't the same, so you just didn't realize.
Yeah, it's like that you weren't exposed necessarily to the crowd of hop in a small plane and just go some short distance kind of thing, right?
Right,
It's a
exactly.
different world, that is for sure. And what I'm amazed by is there's so many things that we think of these passions out there and or niches similar to aviation, but I'd like to think that aviation's one of the most open ones. Like someone pokes their head in the door and we rip them in.
Exactly, exactly. You don't meet somebody that is not in aviation that doesn't become your family. You know,
Hmm.
you just don't. So it's an amazing feeling to be welcomed into something that even people that don't love aviation, people still grab onto them and they're like, yeah, but your spouse does. So that means we treat you equal and you are a pilot, like you are treated as such.
Yeah, I often say it's a lot like being a police officer or a firefighter, right? Like you can go anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and first of all, you somehow sense that there's another person in the room. Of course, the old adage, how do you know someone's a pilot? Well, he'll tell you. But besides that, you kind of just sense it. You know, I've been around people and they'll say something and I'll tune into a key word. And I'm like, you fly? I'm like, yeah, how'd you know? And I'm like, because you said something and I just tune into it. But I describe like Oshkosh, for example, where at Oshkosh I have 600,000 family members. Yeah, you got a few uncles that you wish weren't there, but you got 600,000, family members, and that's kind of how the aviation world is. We all have the few uncles, but generally speaking, we're a tight knit family, and I think even in some of the videos, I don't get to show it enough, unfortunately, but we've had occasions where we've landed in a small airport and we've had people we didn't know give us keys to their, $50,000 vehicle to go drive to get lunch because we
Because
needed to
there's
go
no
eat and they didn't want
FBO.
to drive us. They're like, just take the vehicle. And you're like,
Wow.
what? So, which I'm still awed by to this day, and it's not because they knew who I was because they had no clue who I was. It was just because I'm an aviator and therefore we're family. And that's fantastic. It's the best
It,
thing ever.
it really is. So, I mean, Kim, I'm interested in your perspective. So much of what your new series, all these other things we'll talk about, but you had this fresh look into this. So, Chris and I, of course, coming back, we're talking here about how like, oh yeah, it's so welcoming. What was your impression when you first got to see what this was like?
So I really didn't know what to expect. And I was just trying to take it all in, like just trying to understand being in a small plane and absorb all that and trying to be like, okay, how does one get here? And it just I don't know. It was such a blur trying to grasp that very fast once he introduced me to the plane that almost every other week we're flying and I'm like, I just don't know what happened to my life. Like, why did I wake up and now I'm living in a plane? Like it's so weird. It's still weird. And I still get humbled that this is my life now and it's it's crazy weird and exciting all at once.
Were
She's
you
often said when
comfortable?
we're flying, she's like, I how did I get here? I can't believe I'm here. Like we're literally like we're at altitude, and she's like, I can't believe it. And so yeah,
I'm in a plane.
yeah, she says that all the time. She's like, it's so weird. I can't believe I'm still in an airplane. Even though I think she's now, earned the right to be in the community, and of course the series we'll talk about in a little bit, even more so. But yeah, so
Well, I think it's
it's
always
cool.
good to practice gratitude, right? And we are able to practice our passion, and being able to be grateful for that and appreciate it is a wonderful thing to keep that sense of wonder that either you had as a little kid or you had the first time that you got a chance to go up there and decide whether you were actually more amazed at the airplane or by the guy you were flying with.
It was definitely the plane. It was definitely the plane.
And we're done.
And scene. That's amazing. So, Chris, tell me a little bit about your background and how you got not just to being able to fly a Baron, which is one of the really most wonderful aircraft out there. I mean, obviously I like it. I fly a Bonanza, so you had another engine on there, and I'm in awe of what you're flying. So how'd you get to that point, and then how'd you translate that into YouTube?
The short story.
The short story, yeah. We've only got a small window here. So basically, I owned a Mooney before I owned the Baron. And long story short, I ended up selling the Mooney. And I went a couple years without an airplane. And it was finally time. Everything kind of worked itself out. And now it was time for me to get an airplane again. And so honestly, I wasn't looking for a Baron. I wasn't even looking for a multi-engine for that sake. I figured I'd buy another Mooney. I was going to buy a K model, turbocharged Mooney. I loved my Mooney. I just wanted the next level up in terms of being able to get altitude and above the weather. Living in Florida, you can't get above all the weather, but at least in the teens, you can see stuff a little better and it's a little easier to get around. So that was my thought. And then a friend of mine who I should probably not be friends with anymore because he told me about this airplane. And he's like, hey, I know this Baron that you can probably steal. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Every time you hear you can steal something, if I had $1 for every time, I wouldn't need to steal anything because I'd have the money to buy whatever I want. So I'm like, yeah, whatever, send me the info and I'll take a look at it. And long story short, he sent me the info and the plane was up in Schenectady, New York, like nothing like it does now. And I flew up to Schenectady, New York, and I mean, the plane was basically being given away. And so, being the good negotiator I am, I tried to get the price down even lower. At which point the guy laughed at me and said, look, here's the deal. He's like, I haven't even advertised this airplane. If I'm going to list it, I'm going to list it for double what we're asking for right now. And I knew he wasn't bluffing. It was a legit deal. And so long story short, I go, okay, fine. If you will get in the airplane with me and fly it down to Florida, I'll buy the airplane. And he's like, yeah, I'll get in the airplane and I'll fly it. And so I don't advise this, but that was my pre-buy. It was because I knew I was getting it for such a deal. I'm like, if the plane turns out to be bad, I'll sell the airplane and get my money back. If I couldn't sell the airplane because it was such a bad problem, I'll part it out and get my money back. I wasn't worried about it. So while I never would advise people to take that route, that's what I did. But for me, the pre-buy was, are you willing to get in this plane and fly from New York to Florida? Because that's going to tell me everything I need to know. Well, or tell me you're really crazy, one or the other. So he did. He flew in the airplane and we flew back to Florida. He also, the guy that it was actually wasn't the owner of the airplane. He was just someone, is a friend of the owners, and there was a guy who just had lots of toys and it was time to move on. And so he was a CFI, and so that worked out good because now I got to log the instructional time that I needed to. And boom, that was it. And that's how I bought the Baron. And so I had the Baron, and to the other point was, how did I get into the video? I basically was looking on YouTube for information about flying a Baron because I didn't really know much about it. I'd never flown a Baron. And like I said, I wasn't in the market for one, and I didn't really see anything out there. But I did find some videos of someone posting their entire flight on YouTube. And I'm like, well, if this guy can do this, people are watching it, well, why wouldn't I do it? Well, and so that's what I did. So I took a camera and I put it over my shoulder, actually over this shoulder, and my very first video had nothing but one camera and music. And people tuned in and watched it. I had 100, 200 people watch it. And I was like, wow, 200 people I don't know watch this. I'm like, all right, I'll put another video up. And I put another video up and I did the same thing. And I'm like, wow, people watch that. I'm like, all right, let me get another camera. I should record the audio. And it just kind of evolved. And so I started off with one camera and no audio, and then now I'm up to 7 cameras. Well, that guy that I talked about initially, that was Greg, which you may know as Greg Mink from Premier One Driver, who, if you follow the channel, you've seen that we've become fast friends, and, we've flown together, and Greg's an amazing guy. And so I tell him all the time, I'm like, I hope you're happy because of you, you've basically ruined my life. Now I have to sit here and make all these videos and do all this stuff. And so obviously I say that with tongue in cheek, but so Greg's to blame for the channel. My other buddy's to blame for the Baron. And
And I'm to blame for the single that we're about to buy.
I do that stuff.
That's right.
And now, thanks to the series you're on, it's probably going to lead to having a single. So
That's
what are you gonna do?
awesome. That's awesome. And now, just to make sure I understand, so your background before that, I mean, you fly a lot of different aircraft, so the experience level that you have is not. I want to make sure people understand what level pilot you actually are.
So that's my favorite. So that was my best kept secret for a long time, because I loved the comments that told me basically how horrible of a pilot I was and how I didn't know what I was doing, which was always great to me. And because to your point, yeah, I'm an ATP rated pilot. I actually have 5 type ratings. I currently fly a Learjet 60. I'm single pilot typed in the Citation Mustang. I used to fly the 500 series, Citation 1s and 2s, and the Citation 650s, which is the 3s and the 7s. So yeah, I've done a little jet flying. I still, in fact, if anyone watching is looking for a contract Lear 60 pilot,
Now,
get a hold of Jeff, get a hold of me, let me know. I'm
With
available.
a flight attendant.
okay, you know what? You had me a flight attendant now. Now we're on board. We can charter something. So, Kim, was this part of the little download that he gave you as far as like why it's safe to fly with him in the beginning when you first met? Did he drop any jet pilot?
No.
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 Really? He just said, get in the Baron. I think I know how to fly this.
Yeah, so I was obviously at that point oblivious to making sure somebody's safe to fly with, because you think it's like a car that anybody can do it within reason. Obviously, you're like, okay, well, if you're licensed, then you can do it. Now, again, that's a very loaded statement, we all know, but I was oblivious, and now I'm like, oh, I want to go fly with that person, and he's like, you don't know them.
Nope.
I'm like, I have no ability to fly with anybody,
Yeah.
because he's so protective over making sure that they can't just be a pilot. Like, they have to have skill and they have to have knowledge, and they basically have to get a background check before I can get in the plane. So yeah.
Listen, it's precious cargo. So I just, you got to make sure that
your dad/fiance who's looking out for you to make sure that you're okay.
He just doesn't want me to fly and get enough experience that I'm better than him. That's all that is.
Oh, doesn't want to get different perspective on things. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, if anyone who's been flying for a while, I mean, it's not even, it's no disrespect to any, we've all been there, right? We all started as zero-time pilots, and we all worked our way up, right? And it has nothing to do with if you have a type rating or you don't have a type rating. Like that, you don't even have to be an ATP. Like none of that's important to me. What's important to me is, number one, is are you, a skilled pilot? And a skilled pilot to me isn't even necessarily that you have amazing stick and rotor skills. It's that you make good decisions, right? The best of pilots make the decisions that they don't need the best of skills, right? And so I'm a big believer of that. So for me, it's I need to know like what kind of pilot you are, and then there's also just the equipment as well. Like you can be a great pilot, but if the equipment isn't properly taken care of and maintained, as an AMP, you can appreciate this. That adds a whole nother level. And so there were things that I flew when I first started flying that I would never fly today, nor would I allow her to get in today, that I did. So you just view things differently as you get more knowledge and experience. You start to view things different. With that being said, obviously I fly a piston airplane. I fly, twin engine. I'll gladly get into a single. I wish I still had my money.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
I didn't say which single. Like I won't fly the 152 like I trained in, but there are certain airplanes that that I'd gladly get into. For me, it's just a matter of I just need to know. It's precious cargo. I mean, listen, it's like anything else. Would you let you've got boys, right? Would you let them get in a car with just any other kid, or do you want to know who it is they're getting in the car with and know that they're going to make smart decisions?
Oh, you're absolutely right. It's interesting, I think, on a couple levels. On one level, of course, that's the truth, right? We all trained and did things that we look back and say like, man, like I can't believe I did that, or I can't believe I flew in that plane. And I don't want my kids taking that risk. I don't want anyone I care about taking those types of risks, even though I did that. And then at the same time, I always kind of question that view that we all have of why is there a difference of things that we would do ourselves versus we would do with passengers? And that seems to, how do you feel about that?
That we would do ourselves today, that
Yeah,
we
like
wouldn't do it.
even now it seems most pilots that I've talked to, and I fight it even with myself. I would sit there and go, yeah, I would make that trip if I'm doing it on my own right now, or I would do this. I wouldn't do it with my kids in the back. It's hard to force yourself sometimes to view that differently. And yet, if you ask the other person, if you ask your kids, if you ask him, looking at that, they'd say, I would imagine, I would hope, would say, I don't want to lose you, so I don't want you making any different decisions than you would make with me.
Right. So I think for myself personally, I think I'm past that. Honestly, I don't think that I'll do a trip now that I wouldn't necessarily do with her in the airplane. I think what I would do is like if I needed to test something, if there was like if I needed to do a test flight and I felt it wasn't safe, because it's a flight that has to happen. I don't have get there-itis, so I don't know that I would do a trip that I wouldn't do with her. I don't enjoy turbulence. I'm not a daredevil. I don't like roller coasters, right? There's certain things I just don't do. So I think for me, it's more of I used to get into airplanes that I wouldn't get into today. But in terms of the actual flight, I don't know that that's the case. Short of I need to do a maintenance flight, make sure this is okay. It's better if you're not in the airplane,
Right.
but it has to happen.
Makes a lot of sense.
Type scenario for me.
That makes sense.
But that's also because I don't want to miss out on a day of her life that I don't have to either. Or my son's life. I don't want to miss a day of that either. So to me, missing that is just as bad as them not being there. So I don't ever want to. That goes in my thought process, I guess, is an easy way to
That's
say
a great way, and I'm absolutely thrilled that you're at that level, and it tells me I've got a little way to go myself.
it. I see what you're building back there.
So Kim, I want to get towards where you're going with the series, and so tell me a little bit about at what point did you start becoming interested in left seat? Was there a progression towards this? What got you there?
So I think, in all honesty, it was inevitable. We all kind of knew that it was going to happen. The expectation is extremely high for our followers. It's extremely high.
You were peer pressured by your followers into becoming a pilot?
No, but did it play a role? Yes, but it more played a role in getting me to do it faster, even though the past 2 years have been not easy to get it done. But it played a role in me doing it faster than me going, okay, I'll do it in my own time. Unfortunately, I had the ability to be in a plane all the time because I always had access to the twin. So I didn't have that itch to constantly want to fly and be like, oh man, I really need to get in the air, because we were always in the air. So that spoiled me to the point where I'm like, it's okay, it'll come. Whereas people are on the ground going, I wish I can get in the air. And I'm like, yeah, I'm already there. And that's a bad thing for me. That's an extreme disadvantage that I feel like didn't give me as much as an urge that I should have, because I was already spoiled with a plane to fly in. But that didn't mean that I didn't want to.
Right.
I think from day one, I was always curious, but again, I always felt like it wasn't a reality. It wasn't something that I could easily do, again, because we've got the twins. So it's that much harder to go and find a plane and do a school, because of course you want to do it in your own plane. And I
I
mean,
think if you look at the progression of the videos, even early on, right? Like her very first video, it's one of the things she brought to the channel that I really loved, and I didn't realize she'd bring to the channel when she finally agreed to allow me to film the flights. Is that she was always, from day one, she always started asking questions. You can always see that there was a level of interest because she wanted to know. She's very analytical. And so I think she had a level of complacency, which is why she kind of needed the push. Now, I will argue that, the push from the viewers is somewhat self-imposed. I mean, if you listen to the viewers, well, the channel would be 1,000 different directions and we probably wouldn't even be flying based on some of them, but especially me. But with that being said, she had always asked the right questions. And I think analytically, she needed to wrap her head around everything. And I am, while I do feel some of it's self-imposed, I am glad that she did get a push, wherever that push came from, to actually then take the next step to actually begin the training. In which case she went from complacent to a little secret out, which is in between. So we started the series, which released last week, and the next video will come out tomorrow actually. But she did her training. Well, then Oshkosh came, so we had to stop training and go to Oshkosh. Unfortunately, we got to be able to pay for all this kind of stuff, so I had to go back to work. So we had to take a little hiatus from it, and then now we're going to go back and continue the training with Sporties. And then as soon as when she was there, she was getting tired, she was getting burnt, and you can kind of see that in the videos as they progress. And as soon as we left and she wasn't flying, she turned to me and she's like, "Oh my God, I think I get what people are talking about now. I want to go flying. I miss not flying." And I'm like, boom, like to me, like chills. Like that was the moment that I'm like, yes, okay, you're doing it for the right reasons. You're doing it because you want to do it. You have that bug. Because I didn't want her doing it for me. I sure didn't. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wanted her to know how to land an airplane. That I did want. But I didn't want, learning to fly for me. I sure didn't need to do it for the channel because that wasn't part of the channel. And I definitely didn't need to do it because of the subscribers and viewers wanted to see it happen. I wanted it to be, that's what she wants to do.
Right. Well,
And she
Kim, I
did,
mean,
and now the bug bite.
there's obviously a big difference between a lot of there's courses, there's short classes, there's things that have to do with cockpit cool and right seat and all sorts of things to be, what some people's motivation is I want to know enough and be safe enough to like land the plane in emergency if something happens to you or something like that. That's one level. It's a whole nother level to have that desire to do it yourself.
it really is. And I had kind of realized that being right seat is just being right seat. Like it's important, but you can only do so much. You're only setting yourself for so much knowledge. And after, I'd say, a good solid week of training, I realized what a difference it is being in that left seat. And it's literally a whole nother world. It's a foot away, but it's a whole nother world and a different meaning to being in. It's a whole different meaning.
It's the first time with an AirPod.
Oh my God. It's a whole different meaning from being in the cockpit.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit more humbled and appreciative to finding that drive. And and I knew that that's kind of what I needed. Is I'm very hands-on, so I needed to be in the cockpit training to understand how that left seat was going to actually feel.
Right.
And
So
how different is the left seat? How different is the left seat? What can't you do in the left seat that you always do in the right seat?
I don't know. What? Oh.
I thought you were going to say sleep.
It's not that I can't. It's that I don't have time.
So I never eat. And if you're in the videos, you'll see she's always eating and everyone's always talking about her eating. And I rarely eat when I'm flying. It's not something that I do. And so she said, "Now I understand why you don't eat when you're flying." I'm like, "Thank you."
No, except for
You know what?
I'm doing
Kim,
maneuvers.
don't listen
I'm
to him.
doing training.
The microphone flips right up. You can eat and drink. I'll tell you right now that that's just particular to Chris.
Well, in honor of my CFI, I try and respect him. Every time I would take like one hand off the yoke, he's like, my controls. So I was like, oh man, he doesn't want me to have like one hand off this yoke at any point in time. So I like learned quickly. I was like, respect the CFI and his rule, and don't like take your hand off the yoke. So we'd land and I'm like chugging my water like crazy because I'm like dying in the air, but I'm trying to respect his rule that he wants a hand on the yoke. So there it is. There became my standard that I had to live up to, so I didn't get yelled at by Matt. So
So take me through your first lesson. Tell me what you
oh,
remember, because that's the first lesson's always the biggest one.
the first lesson was fine. I was perfection on the first lesson.
She was. You'll see it if you haven't seen the video yet.
Oh
The
man.
very first one, he was actually amazed on how well she was, how well she was doing. And the problem is when you start here, you've got only one place to go. And unfortunately, she started here, so the very next flight, she came down a little bit.
And you're showing with your hand starting at the top, basically, for those who are just listening.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
so basically, my first flight, it was fine. You could tell that Matt just wanted to see how comfortable I was in the plane, see my mannerisms, and what my skill level was. I mean, you can only watch so much Baron stuff to understand, but it's a different beast. It really is. And being in that left seat, you act different. So you could tell that he was just trying to get a baseline, and my baseline was fine. Like I knew not to death
It was
grip.
above
Like
average.
it was, yeah. I mean,
Your baseline's above average.
yeah,
It's okay.
but I didn't know what I didn't know going into training. And so I think that's where my mental capacity and my skill level started declining, because it's stuff that we just don't do. It's that stuff that we just can't do in the Baron. And then I'm just like, it's tough. It's tough having an expectation and having as much knowledge as I did and hands-on experience flying, and then to go into the left seat, into a single, into doing things that you can't practice and anticipate. And it got bad. It got bad.
See, that's the cool part of this whole series, though, is that we share that, right? You get to see the highs and the lows, and you get to see her struggles, and not from an edited perspective, right? You actually get to hear her thoughts because of how we did the video. She kind of, I call it a confessional, right? I sit her down in a confessional, and I get to talk to her before the flight and after the flight to get her take on the flight. And I did the same thing with her instructor, Matt. And then we put it all together, so you get to see and hear her thoughts as well as Matt's, and then see for yourself what's actually happening. And so this series, unlike the regular Baron series where, you typically were flying places and you see a lot of flying, this one is, you see the flying, but you're not, for someone who's already a pilot, you're not watching the mundaneness of watching somebody do stalls. Like you're actually feeling what she's feeling and what she's thinking, and you're hearing what she's thinking, and so you're understanding her thought process and the mental side of what she's going through, and her struggles and her accomplishments for that matter. And that's what's being shared, and that's what this series brings to the table that I hadn't seen anybody else do it at this point.
No, I
So,
agree. And you're the producer, right, of this? That's the reason for, obviously, the fact that there's, these two, you're so intimately involved in it. You're producing the series.
yeah, I'm not in the video. I'm not training her because I like my relationship. So I get to just be a fly on the wall. And so, yeah, I'm documenting the entire series. We have 5 cameras on the airplane, as well as, of course, I got footage from the ground, I got drone footage, I got all kinds of stuff, and then the conventionals, and then I get to put it all together. And that's why I'm able to pull this stuff out of her. And honestly, she never watched a single bit of anything I had done on the footage, and she didn't watch any of her footage until I think you actually just saw when the first video released, you saw the first video.
Yeah, so actually
when it released,
premiered is when I watched
she
the
never
first
saw any of
video.
it because we wanted to keep this as raw and real as possible and authentic. And if she watched my edits as they happened, then I didn't want her thinking about, I shouldn't say she's the one that didn't want to do it, because I actually did sometimes want to show her, but she didn't want it to change how she would react or act with the camera around, because it's just a fly on the wall. She's not playing to it. And it's pretty cool. And there's some vulnerable moments that are in fact, I think actually the video that comes out tomorrow, there's a whole scene or two that wasn't meant for camera. I was trying to do a confessional with her. She was not having it, didn't want to do a confessional. She had a bad flight, and so finally I'm like, okay, like, camera's off, just talk to me. Let's just have this conversation. And except being the producer in me, I didn't turn the camera off. So,
Shocker.
because that's what I wanted though. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not looking to expose her. I'm not looking to capitalize off it. It's not what it's about. The idea is there are lots of people that go through flight training, and they hit these humps in the road, and that's all they are. I hate to even call it a wall, right? It's a hump in the road, but they think it's a wall that they can't get over, and so then they go and they quit, and they stop flying, and that's a horrible thing.
Or
And
they
so,
second guess themselves.
and so our attitude is that if this series can stop one person from giving up flying, or encourage someone who said, I don't think I can do it, but I watched her and I saw what she went through, and you know what, she overcame it, I can do it. If it can motivate someone or stop someone from doing it, then it becomes worth her being so vulnerable and showing that side, that personal side, because it really is as personal as you can get. Because typically, we're closed off. Like, even though we share videos, like, it's not really that open and intimate.
Well,
like this series
social
is.
media is what you want people to see. In all reality, edited footage and social media in and of itself is only what you want people to see of yourself. And that's not what this necessarily is. Like, does it not feel great that I acted the way that I did? No, but I'm not the only person that acts like that. So it's not, I can't be offended if somebody doesn't appreciate how I reacted. Get over it.
Yeah, the breakdowns weren't in the
Those of
airplane.
you who are going to watch it, be forewarned. So, Kim, I think, for anyone, whether it's a class you're taking or whether it's learning to fly, there's the part that it really always should be about, which is just learning and when working on yourself. And then there's always the part where you're actually just wanting to please your instructor and you're wanting to do the right thing for them. Did you feel a lot of pressure from that, coming from the Baron Pilot series, coming from the fact you had hours and experience before this? Was that playing a role?
So there is, I've said before that there's definitely expectation of, if you go back into the past 2 years of us teeing this series up, that people are like, you're going to do fine, you do great on comms, and you're going to do perfect, you always fly the Baron. And it's like, yes, I do those things, but it is totally different in the left seat, in a single, by yourself, VFR, not IFR. Like, there's so many levels that what I've already learned don't apply, that I'm just a basic student like somebody else. So then I have these people that are like, you're fine. Oh, you're not going to make mistakes. And it's like, what is going on in your mind that you think this? And then you're like, well, should I not make mistakes? Should I be perfect? Maybe I should be perfect. I should have this expectation. And I have very high expectations for myself, that not just for the experience that I have, but when I wake up every morning, I better do things on point, on time, and in the order that I expect them to be done in. And if I don't, then I failed. Like, I'm very hard on myself, and that is kind of what I have to get over in general, but in the training, that's a huge hurdle for me.
It's hard to fight against the kind of the demon of perfection.
Yes.
But you know what? It also tells you that you're a natural for this, because good pilots are perfectionists and good pilots care about that. That is the truth.
She is a natural. Going through the footage and editing it made me appreciate even more, like watching her. It's surreal, like, because all of her experience up until this point had been right here, right? Literally right here
To the right
next
seat.
to me. And all of a sudden, here I am, I'm seeing her in an airplane that I'm not in. I'm like,
Freaking out.
it's a little weird, right? And then I see her and she's just sitting there, and you'll see as the series goes on, you can see the progression of her getting more comfortable.
Absolutely.
And as she gets more comfortable, it's like, here it goes, my chills again. It's pretty amazing watching her. And you can just see you watch the confidence grow, because you'll see in the beginning, if you watch the last video and tomorrow's video, like there is no confidence. She has no self-esteem. She has no confidence. She has no self-belief. And which is why I say this is all about the mental side of flying. And then you see that transition. Spoiler alert, it transitions. That's why the video doesn't stop. And it transitions to her getting that confidence. And it's amazing. And then, spoiler alert, she eventually solos, and I'm on the ground and I'm sitting there. And it was one of those moments where I'm listening to her on the radio. I have my transceiver there and it's sitting there on my side because I am getting the documenting, the landings from the ground. And all of a sudden one day I'm listening and I'm like, man, I'm hearing her on a radio that like through the radio. This is really bizarre. And then I'm looking up and I'm seeing this airplane and I'm like, I'm hearing her in that airplane and I'm here on the ground. This is like complete role reversal. And it was amazing. It was fantastic. It was weird. It was bizarre. But it made me so proud and so excited for her and her just watching that progression and where she's come. And it was awesome. I mean, I think her solo, I was probably more emotional. I was more emotional for her solo than I was my own. And and I was definitely more emotional than she was, I think, when she soloed.
I don't know.
Tim,
I don't know. I had a lot of emotions that day.
Tell me about your solo. What did it feel like?
Oh God, you're making me have like PTSD. It was a horrible day. And then it turned out to be perfection. And I hate saying that because I came off from my solo, very confident, very proud. But the next day, going into the next flight, I told Matt very specifically, I'm humbled. I'm not cocky now. Like, don't get me wrong. I know that I just did what I did, and not a lot of people can say they did that. But I'm not cocky. I'm humbled that I am still training. Like, don't get me wrong. And because I don't want to become that person and then have to go dig myself out of a ditch again, mentally or physically, and have to go through that. I want to just stay higher and more confident. The solo day had a lot of emotions, to say the least.
Yeah. So I wasn't aware. I knew that there was. So back up, right? We all know how solos work, right? So for those who don't know, you go up with your instructor. You do 3 landings, right, beforehand. And I knew she was going to solo on this day. And so you do 3 landings, and after you do 3 landings, then they taxi over, and they're like, all right, it's all you now. So after she did her first landing, they go and they taxi back because they're gonna go and they do full stop taxi backs. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, why haven't they taken off yet? And they're just sitting there. They're sitting on the ground, and I don't even know how I'm gonna edit this yet because this is where I'm at in the edit process. And I'm like, they're just sitting there. So when I finally watched the footage, she is full blown. Like we haven't even talked about it. I'm still not even quite sure why she was, but she was full blown, just emotionally lost it. I don't know if it was anticipation of what's happening. I don't know if it was because of where she's at, like in this moment, like how did I get here? But she had lost it. And then what was really cool is watching her pull herself out of that.
Matt helped me a lot
Yeah,
with that.
Matt's fantastic.
Matt saved me. I had a full-blown panic
100%.
attack that day in the plane, and it.
Yeah, it was bad. It was emotional, and Matt definitely did. He picked her up. And then their conversations after that like went to like obscure stuff, which is even funnier.
It was an emotional day.
It was funny, I should say. And then they kind of picked it all up, and so she went from that to all of a sudden doing the other 2 landings, and now she's going, and off she goes to do her solo. And the other part of that, she gathers herself here, is that she, on top of all this emotion, right? She's a perfectionist. She wants to get everything perfect, and she's already been beating herself up unnecessarily because she, her expectations for herself are so high. Then on top of that, there's 2 runways, right? It's 4 and 2-2, and 4 is displaced threshold. It's got some trees on it, and so 4 has been her nemesis, right? But thankfully on this day, because the aviation gods are looking out for her, and they're like, listen, we're going to let you solo today. We're going to make your life easy. So we're going to blow the wind right down 2-2, and you're going to do all your landings on 2-2. So we can thank the aviation gods for that. Except, like every good story would have it, by the time she goes to taxi out, she gets to the runway, and she's listening to the ATIS, and the winds have reversed.
All day they were 2-2. All day. I get in the plane, I started up, I start taxiing, and that lovely wind turns to 4, and I freak out because I'm like, no, I am not doing my solo. No, we're not doing this because this is not going to end well. And Matt was like, I don't care, do it. And I'm like, are you sure? He's like, you got to go to 4. And I'm like, crap. So I putts down to 4
Very
as slow as
slowly.
I can, hoping that the winds are going to change. And I kill it.
She did. She killed it. It was amazing. Her landings were spot on.
Do you feel, Kim, that having gone through all that process, including the emotional side of it, that it makes you that much stronger for knowing you can get yourself out of that panic attack as well?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I know for the most part myself that I just got to like put myself in it, let myself have that emotion, and then put it aside. I don't do well with not getting that emotion out. Like I'm gonna marinate in that if I don't. So it's better for me to feel it, get it out, and then move on.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's kind of what preemptively happened with the panic attack in and of itself and everything else. I mean, it's what I do, and a lot of people don't know that, and that's because they don't personally see that side of me or have to see that side of me, and that's where this comes into play, that people don't show that side. Mental health is a huge taboo thing in aviation, and it should be talked about more and promoted more and educated more. But just because you have a panic attack doesn't mean that you can't fly a plane. Just because you have anxiety issues or anything, because everybody does.
Well, full disclosure too, like she doesn't get emotional when she's flying an airplane. Like
Yeah,
she's in pilot mode. She's in aviator mode.
Yeah.
It's the debrief,
It's letting it out at that point, because now I'm having to think about that emotion and think about what happened, and now I'm having to talk about it and push it through, and that's.
I mean, sneak peek into the series. She actually goes through a full-blown emergency that occurs. I don't want to give a whole lot away about that because you got to watch the series, but it's a legit full-blown emergency. Mayday is called the whole 9 yards, and in the moment, she's in the moment. Now she has an instructor with her. She wasn't, it's not solo, you know. So she's got someone there, but she handled, like, in the moment, she handles everything fine. She's an aviator first. You deal with the situation. It's, you know, when she has time to process, you know, your mind's your own worst enemy. And just like when that day, the pre-landings, right? The first landing was fine. The taxi back, now she's got time to process what's happening. That's where it happens, not in the moment. So, you know, I just, full disclosure, you know, she's not
Full disclosure,
in the
everybody.
airplane.
I'm not having
losing
a
her
panic
mind in the
attack
airplane.
in the
No.
plane. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not,
Yeah, not in the moment.
no.
Kim,
Yeah.
on the flip side, like looking at some of the real, you know, positives of your abilities in some of these areas, did you find that the pace at which things happen in a complex aircraft like the Baron, the experience you've had, you're flying right seat during IFR, during approaches at the speeds that they happen, et cetera, did you feel like any of that helped prepare you or helped some of the process of flying a training aircraft?
In theory, I feel like the single was just as fast, but that's because I'm physically doing it. Like, I never really handled the plane past long final, like 5-10 mile out final. I mean, very early on when I didn't know anything, but you know, I didn't know what I was doing, so it was just kind of like oblivious. But to an extent, I think subconsciously there's some knowledge and skill built in to what needs to happen and how it needs to happen, but I feel like the single is just as fast because I'm the one doing it. So it's a whole different world.
Yeah.
Things happen faster when you're
Yeah.
the one responsible.
That makes sense.
Even though it's half the speed, it doesn't feel like it's half the speed.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that, like, when I think of when Jake and Ben did their pilot training, they similar experience, you know, in terms of like looking back and having done a lot of right seat, but that's it. But what was interesting is I compared it to my flight training, and there were things that almost panicked me because it was the first time I'd seen them. The first time I'd ever seen the windshield go white going into IMC after I was licensed and ready, but it's still the first time it's really happening and I'm the only one doing it. I think for them, they look at that and they're like, well, I've seen the windshield go white as we enter a cloud since I was, you know, 2 feet tall. So at least there's certain things that I hope helped them, and I'm hoping help you in your process from your experience as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that some training does shift over. Could I pinpoint it? No, I don't know. Like, I'm thinking, because I'm like, you're like, oh, IMC, and I'm going, oh yeah. Well, no, because we don't really go IMC. Like, he avoids it like the plague.
Oh, I do.
If we literally have to like go into a cloud and we're on an IFR plan, he's like, this cloud may or may not be in our path. And
here's the deal. Is that, bro, listen, we fly in Florida. Like, we don't have the luxury of flying up in the Northeast where you guys have that nice smooth IMC, right?
Luxury?
We have tomato. It's all perspective, right? For us, you know, it being in Florida, IMC, it means it, you know, typically it's cumulus. You know, it's not going to be smooth. It's not going to be a fun day. It's not going to be a fun ride. Even a small cloud, you know, you go into it and you're going to get jocked, especially in a light aircraft. So, you know, I view IFR ticket as a ticket to get out of it, to go into it. Yes, if you got to shoot an approach, we've shot approaches. You know, we've gone all the way down to, you know, the Baron, we've gone to minimums. No. We've gotten down to like 500 feet in the Baron, AGL.
Yeah, once.
So yeah, and that's the idea. Well, the idea is not, you know, well, we're in Florida a lot too, but so the idea is not to, you know, I view it as not to go into it. So yeah, so to her point, we do try to avoid that. I try to avoid weather, right? That's what one thing the Baron Pilot Series should show you is you can get almost anywhere you want to go and don't necessarily have to go into weather except for approach. Then you don't have much of a choice.
Right.
But I had always said to her, and it's a shame too, I was like, if ever you have problems, going back to your speed thing, if ever you have any problems, I'm like, here's what we're gonna do, because you know I'm the genius. I'm like, I'm gonna take you up in the Baron, And so if you got problems doing steep turns or doing any maneuvers, I'm gonna take it in the barren, because everything's gonna happen so much faster that if you can do it in the barren, once it slows down to 172 speeds, it'll be cake. And there's two parts to that. Part number one is, well, those are never the problems she had, so rock on. And then the second part was the barren was actually in the shop getting AC put in it. So it wasn't available anyways. So, you know, while I was a genius, apparently I'm an idiot.
and one of the main issues was stalls, and I'm like, it doesn't matter if we have the barren anyways, because we can't stall it. So
yeah, we can,
I'm like,
but we're not.
your idea is pointless. So it was just like, no.
So Kim, is this like kind of, as the saying goes, kind of creating a monster? Are you starting to feel now that you mentioned you want a single, so there's going to be another plane. You guys will have to fly formation to go somewhere for lunch. Or B, is this going to be a rock, paper, scissors for the left seat coming up?
Yeah, hot in here is just me.
So what this has done is I started creating like thoughts in my head of how can I create more people to see GA. You know, originally I had said I never knew about GA. You know about planes, you know about that people fly, but do you know about GA? And how can I do that? And now I'm just trying to figure out how I can get more people into GA, get more people into airplanes, whether they're passengers or not, getting them comfortable. And then obviously getting more women and girls into aviation in and of itself too. So something that I've always said I want to do is do like pilots and pause and angel flights and things like that. That's not the easiest thing to do in the barren. It's way more expensive. It's, you know, it's just not always feasible. So that inevitably means that we gotta get a single.
That's called pilot, is what that's called, folks.
So
you have graduated to pilot rationalization. Absolutely. We now need 2 aircraft.
Right. Well, and that was the whole thing. And then there was the other excuse that I tried to convince him of, which was, you know, those airports that we just can't get into, that are too short for the barren, that are really fun to go to. That's why we need the single. And he's like, no, we're not going to travel in a slow plane. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I don't know about you, but like that's the whole thing is let's travel. Yeah, when we need to take the big plane to go to places fast and longer distances, we'll take the barren. But when we need to go to that, you know, grass strip or I always forget, like not Apalachicola, but there's this island that's right off of the west coast of Florida that we cannot get into, like ever in the barren. And I'm like, that would be a super cool place to fly into, have a good time, a little vacation, but we can't go. And that's the excuse that I am sticking to as to why I need a single.
Yeah, listen, I do want to say this real quick, because I know we're getting close to running out of time, is that I am super proud of Kim. I'm super proud of how far she's come and everything she's done in her pilot training, and even more than her pilot training. Off camera, wasn't around. Once she actually got in, we talked about her actually having the bug, and now she's thinking about she wants to go fly more. The other thing she brought up was she's like, hey, how, and we sat down and talked about it, how can I help promote aviation? How can I make an influence in the aviation community that helps bring people in it? And she wanted to do something and give back. And this was on her own, because I'm like, well, we have the channel, we are giving back. But she's like, no, I want to give back. And it made me so proud to see, like, she's come so far, she's accomplished so much. And instead of just being like, this is great, like, this is what I did, she's like, no, okay, now that I've had this, how can I share this? How can I help other people to get from where I was to where I'm going and bring them along with me? And we're still working on, you know, the ideas and what exactly that's going to look like for her. But the mere fact that she wants to do that and do that herself is fantastic. I'm so more proud than she'll ever know. So it's cool.
I absolutely love that. Kim, I see a super cool tail dragger in your future, and see you like dropping into events and calling back home and saying, I'm sorry you weren't able to make it here in the Barren. But
That's a true story right there.
you're on Flying SIC on YouTube, and you can check out one of our videos of where we went.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, the series is The Road to PIC, and it's just absolutely wonderful. I'm thrilled that you've done it, and I'm thrilled with so much that you've accomplished. And I really appreciate both of you taking the time to join us here tonight on Social Flight Live.
Thank you. We really appreciate the
Yeah,
time
no.
that you gave towards us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us on.
You got it. Thanks, guys. You have a good evening.
You
You
too.
too.
Bye, guys.
And to all of you, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us here on Social Flight Live. Next Tuesday, we are back August 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern with Boeing 737 educator, aero mechanic, pilot CFI Mel Williams. He has such a wonderful story of everything that he does in aviation and how much he gives back. So be sure to tune in for that episode. Following that, on Tuesday, September 6th, Vans Aircraft is here. Greg Hughes from Vans Aircraft is going to talk about the new RV-15 and so many cool things going on at Vans. So that will be a very special episode to be here for and get an inside scoop of what's going on. And then on Tuesday, September 13th at 8 p.m. as usual, I am very honored that Nicole Malachowski, former Thunderbirds pilot, will be joining us here to talk about her experience and pilot health. It'll be a very special evening to talk about some things that she has dealt with in her life and challenges that she's overcome, and some of the things that she can pass along to help all of us that are only one medical or one issue away from having to face some very tough decisions when it comes to our flying careers. For Social Flight, I'm Jeff Simon. Thank you so much again for joining us. Blue skies.